since I have two people who can hear me, I'm going to start. So I'm just going to start by sharing my screen with my PowerPoint. There we go. All right, so welcome everybody. So I just want to call your attention to a few things. There's some housekeeping to take a look at. And first off, if you don't want people to see you, you want to control the camera that's in the bottom left of the screen. And you can just turn it off. That way they won't see what's going on in the background if you're having coffee or eating. And if you have a photo up on your profile, that's what's going to show. There's also a mic button. I'd love you to keep it on mute for now, and I'll just let you know when you can unmute it. And if you do not see a chat box, just scroll your mic to the bottom of, your mouse to the bottom of the page, and there should be a button that pops up there. I'd also give you a minute to just finish up whatever you're doing. I'm going to have a lot of information here. You're going to want to pay attention, and I'm going to be having little exercises to do throughout the hour. Just in general, it's a good idea when you have an opportunity to tune out everything else, focus on one thing, give yourself a break from multitasking, grab a coffee and just sit down and listen. There's going to be a lot of great information here. And I'm just going to take a drink. So you are here to listen to the 7 criteria for a media sexy story. I'm going to go pretty quickly. I've timed myself. Oops, I didn't want that to do that. Okay, I've timed myself, so I should be able to average a minute a slide, which means I'm going to be talking quickly. If it's too quickly for you, please make a note in the chat box. Otherwise, you can always listen to this again in the recording and take your time, pause it, go back and forth, and so on. So today we're going to take a look at how you rank in media worthiness. So for all the examples I'm going to give you today, consider how it could apply to your industry. So if you can, start off by going to the chat box and just marking down for me what industry you are in. Because if I know prior to the call today what industry you're in, I can probably use your industry as an example when I'm talking about the 7 criteria. So you could type business-to-business consultant in human resources. You can type cake decorator, travel photography workshops, okay? Oh my God, person after my own heart. I think if I could do that forever, I would do that. Coach entrepreneurs, professional adults, ADHD over the phone on 5 continents, 13 years. Excellent. Okay, now I am going to try and, can you spell out your name phonetically? Because I know I'm going to really mash it up. Pediquili, I don't know. If you can spell that out phonetically, that would really help me. And that way I can refer you to you during the call. Okay, let's keep going, and you could just keep adding it in. Public relations. Pete Quilly, lots of okay. Pete Quilly. All right, is that first and last name? I'm looking at it as one name, like a first name. Pete first. Okay, good. All right, so Pete. Excellent. Professional adults with ADHD. That is such an amazing topic, I have to say. I hope if you have an idea to do PR in the future, talk to me, because it's a favorite topic of mine. There's a ton of people in media who want to talk about this, and it impacts so many different areas. You could, I don't want to say write your ticket, but you have a lot of options. So, and the fact that you've been doing this you've got that credibility is really great. All right, let's jump in. Can you hear me? Put your mic on mute, grab a notebook, close your Facebook, log out of email, turn off your phone. And to let you know, if you stay to the end, I do have a couple of bonus giveaways, and I'm going to give you information on the Media Mastery system. I've got a new series of courses that's going to teach people to take their media relations to the next level. So if you start from scratch, we'll learn how to get you started and get you going. If you've had experience, we'll take it to the next level, see what you're doing wrong, see what you could do right. I created in a 6-week course called the Media Mastery System, which I'm going to be telling you about near the end. And this is what I'm going to be giving away if you stay to the end. So these are editorial planners. We're going to talk about this later on. This is a key to helping you get your story in the media that even a lot of PR companies don't know about. And I really urge people to take advantage of these. I'm going to talk about these later and tell you exactly where to find them and how to take advantage of them. Oh, well, I may not have time to tell you where to find them. You'll have to pay me for that. But in the meantime, we'll learn about these. They basically tell you what's coming up in different magazines week to week or month to month. And then, as I mentioned, the Media Mastery System. So one of the things that's really been apparent to me is that people need guidance. I take courses where I have live interaction week to week because I need guidance, I need the accountability, and I find that the same with a lot of other people. And I think what the coursework that I've been teaching has led me to here in order to be able to teach this system. So I urge you to stay to the end to hear a little bit more about that. So just a little bit about me. I have 25 years as a journalist. My experience crosses the continent from Montreal to Vancouver, to Edmonton to Vancouver, in CBC television and radio. And after coming to Vancouver and working in current affairs, I moved from TV to radio, finally into print. And it was a very interesting learning experience as the editor of a Jewish newspaper here in Vancouver, because it taught me for the rest of my life to know how hard it is for editors in niche publications to get good story content. And it was out there. And when I came across it, I would jump on it. But if you're an editor of a Jewish publication, everything you do has to be related to either the Jewish community or a Jewish person or a Jewish event. There's got to be that angle. So you can imagine if I'm trying to put together a special issue on like home and garden, how do I make that connection? If there were a Jewish gardener out there, they would be in this no matter what they had to say. If there was somebody who was an interior designer who was Jewish, they would be in there. After a while, you kind of use up all these people. But just keep in mind, we're going to talk about demographics and niche markets. These are some of the easiest ways to get into the media. So anyway, after the Jewish Independent, I moved into Glacier Media, working with business in Vancouver, working on their magazines, as a business commentator on global television. And from that, I started instructing media relations at Small Business BC. Now I consult with businesses and entrepreneurs, and you can find out more about that on my website. But the part I'm really excited about is now I'm moving into the online teaching. So I want to show you this guy. You might know him. His name's Roger Killen. And this is what started me on this process. And I'm going to use Roger as an example throughout my presentation because he has some really good things to teach us. So I'm just curious if you know Roger. Actually, that doesn't matter. We won't type that in. So Roger was producing events many years ago where he took people who had knowledge, put them on a panel, and then brought in an audience to learn about whatever it was. And he started off with something called Inside the Den. And he brought people who had been on Dragon's Den into a room, had an audience, they had a panel discussion about what it's like to pitch stories, what you need to know, and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, this that you see in front of you is the first pitch that Roger sent to me. And as you can see, it's an entire block of text. And I looked at it and just thought, like, what on earth is this about? I knew Roger at the time. I knew he was doing some event, but this is just so much information. And I began to realize that a lot of people don't know how to craft a press release or a story pitch in a way that makes it easy for editors and producers to say yes to their material. So I said to Roger, listen, I have an idea that I'm going to put together some workshops and start teaching small businesses, PR people, marketers, whoever wants to know the right ways, the new ways to actually pitch, because now in the 21st century, we just don't have time to read this kind of material. So this is him now producing TEDx Stanley Park material. He is the producer of the annual TEDx Stanley Park event. And I work with him doing some marketing for him just for one season, which is why I know a lot about what goes on behind the scenes. But you know, just to show how far you can go once you have the proper materials and proper promotion. So I said to Roger, listen, I will rewrite your press release for you if you let me use it as a bad example in my courses. And Roger said yes. And so we're going to see later on how that turned out. So over the years, I started giving, in the last 3 years, since I've been working at Business in Vancouver, I've been giving workshops, going to meetup groups, teaching one-on-one, setting up separate Facebook groups. And what I found is that I just wasn't reaching enough people, because you can reach people a bit at a time, but I really wanted to be able to spread this message in a way that was, first of all, not just local, which is, you know, when you go to a face-to-face group, it's just local people. But to reach as many people who needed this information as possible. But enough about me. We are now going to go on to you. And of course, if you want to know more about me, please feel free to email me. I can talk about me for a long time. That's just a little bit of my background. So I'd like to know about you. Where are you at in your media outreach? And you can answer A, B, C, or D. A being you've never tried to reach out to media. B, you've tried but no results. C, you've gotten results already, you want more. D, you are hiding under your sofa. So I'm just going to go silent for a moment. And I'm going to try, I need to try and stop share something. Okay, we have 2 C's. Okay, some people who are experienced. A. Okay. For the C's, the people who've gotten some results, can you tell me what, okay, so Taya, I know, obviously. So Pete, what did you get the results on? Was it on those stories that you were telling me about? 28. I don't understand, Pete, what 28 is. 28 media mentions. Oh, very good. You should be teaching the course. I don't know. Maybe we'll turn your mic on, give you 15 minutes near the end. Okay. So first of all, as I mentioned earlier, whether you're just starting out, have results, want more, whatever it is, there's going to be material in this coverage today. But I want you to really consider thinking about what you have planned for long term. Where do you follow up from here? Because it's great to have the 1 hour, and I hope and I intend to give you lots of value for the 1 hour. But I hate to see people just kind of walk away and have things sort of disappear. So moving on, what are some of these things that resonate with you? They are kind of myths in the industry. We'll go to 1, 2, or 3 now. I think I have a story that you think you have to have a story about something brand new. Like if you don't have something brand new, then you can't pitch to media. That's number 1. Number 2, I'm not a professional writer, so I'm going to have to hire somebody and I'm going to have to pay for that. Or number 3, don't know where the best place is to have my article. Or Pete, okay. So Pete, do you have a particular challenge that you are facing when it comes to media? Is there something restricting you, or just where have you come up against a brick wall? And Taya as well, recently, think of recent projects. Where do you find that you come up against a brick wall? What stops you from either pursuing an avenue that you think might work, or you find you're stopped some other way? So Pete is telling you get coverage ADHD in general, not what you do in terms of coaching. So more coverage for advocacy and stigma. Okay, I'm not sure I follow that, but you know what, Pete, I will really want to talk to you. If you can hang on to the end, we'll have a conversation. We'll unmute the mics and we'll have a conversation. Okay, so coverage on what you actually do. Okay, good. Got that. All right. I want to move on from here. So I just want to start off with telling you a story, which kind of negates a lot of these myths. So this is a woman who I met at Small Business BC, who was coordinating a program called Mentorship BC. And she didn't have a lot of training in traditional media at all. She wasn't a professional writer by any means. And she was worried. Her worry was, they're going to make me write something, and I don't know how to write. And I said, listen, there are a lot of ways to get your story in media. If your goal is not to have to write a column, okay, you don't write a column. You don't want to write it yourself, that's fine. A lot of people are uncomfortable writing. So then let's figure out a way where you can be interviewed by somebody else. And so I just said to her, go and take a look at some of the newspapers or magazines where you would like to be. And she came up with this section called DIY Management, which is part of BC Business, where somebody at BC Business interviews a person who has an expertise or is connected somehow to business operations. And she showed it to me. I helped her write the press release. Sorry, not the press release, the story pitch, the idea. Sent it in, and I think it turned around in less than a week. And so this column ran in Small Business, BC Business. I do get those mixed up. In BC Business, she did not have to write anything herself. There is an associate editor who works with that page, and the associate editor did the interview. So Aisha just had to answer the questions. So we're going to launch into the 7 criteria, but first I urge everybody, when you have a moment, take a piece of paper and write down what is it you want to get out of the media, because that will help determine the different stories that you pitch to media. So are you just looking for brand recognition? You want your name in as many places as possible. You want people from all demographics and geographic areas and financial levels, being able to access your material, then fine. That's one way of doing your media outreach in terms of your strategy. If your key thing is to get in front of thousands of your market, your clients, and you have a very short time to do it in, because maybe there's an event coming up, that's a different type of media outreach. So each of these enables a bit of different direction and helps in the strategy. The other thing you want to know, which is really important when you're accessing media, a lot of media feeds on each other. So going back to the Jewish Independent, which I still get, I still write for them. I used to be the editor. Now I write for them every now and then. And I was reading an article in the Jewish Independent about seniors' residences. And it was just a talk by somebody from UBC. They went out to the seniors' residence and were just giving a talk about them. And I happened to be doing an article for a magazine called Retirement Ready, where I was looking at information about seniors' residences. So I immediately contacted the guy in the Jewish Independent who was giving the talk, interviewed him. He was really great. Now he goes into a magazine. So this is how media feeds on itself. People who are doing newscasts or radiocasts will look at the early edition of a newspaper to see if there's any breaking news from when they were in last night. People who are in newspapers will listen to the television, and so on. So it's another reason to be in wherever you can, because you never know when somebody's going to pick up on your information and want to use you in different media outlets. And of course, if your key is to actually get interactions, purchases or collaborations or inquiries, that will also determine where you might want to go. We are now jumping into the story checklist. Okay, so if you have walked away from your screen, if you have, oops, sorry, I'm just looking for the chat box, which I've lost. If you've walked away from your screen, or if you have turned this on mute or gone to a different screen, come back, because this is the key element that I want to show today. First, we're going to look at the story checklist, and then we're going to actually look at examples of each. So this is not the complete checklist, but I know that if you have 1, 2, 3, or a combination of these, there's a good chance you can be picked up by media, and it will help you when you craft an email when you're sending a pitch to media. So expertise about a specific service, a learned lesson, an event that elicits emotion or is neutral. So you could have an event that might be, children's charity. Something going on elicits an emotion. It's a good emotion. People feel really good about this event. They want to participate or they want to hear about it. You might have a neutral event like the car show or the home show. Doesn't necessarily elicit emotions one way or the other. Or eliciting bad emotions where there might be a very sad event, that could be a news event, or it could be something happening within an industry that elicits negative emotion. Something that's new or changing in your field, connection to a news, cultural, lifestyle, or what I call celebritainment trend. So that is anybody who belongs to the celebrity entertainment trend. Geographic or demographic relevance, niche or quirky offerings. So let's delve into them. So knowledge about a service or product. This is where we're talking at the base level. This is essentially what you know about your service, product, or offering. If you are representing clients, it's about what you know about their service, product, offering. So some of the things that you can ask yourself to start to examine whether or not there's a story. Are there things that surprise people when you talk about the business? Do you have something to offer that's new or different? Or what might editors or producers not actually know about your industry or your product? As much as we as editors or producers try to have a little knowledge about everything, it really is sometimes just a little knowledge. And so what happens is things might get by us, and they may be really good story ideas, but we don't know about them. So if you're in an industry that has had, for example, a bylaw pass that's going to make a difference, we may not know about it. If you can tell us about it and offer yourself as an expert. So, for example, Pete, if there are issues that come up in government bylaws or regulations in the industry that are changing that affect your industry, you can offer yourself as an expert to do an interview that's related to this new subject. So it's something that you have to get onto pretty quickly, but it's totally doable. Here's an example of just somebody talking about their service or product. This is a client of mine whose service is helping people with CRM, which is customer resource management. When I interviewed him, or we did an interview, this came out as his strongest element to start his media campaign with. And so he wrote a column for Small Business and was published within 2 weeks, I think, after he pitched. It got in within a couple of weeks into Business in Vancouver. Now, this is an example of an article that I wrote about the food trucks. And food trucks has a variety of different angles to it. So obviously the person is knowledgeable about their own product, which is the food. So I can talk to them about how they make their product, where it comes from, how good it is. But they are also knowledgeable about business operations. Like, how do you run a food truck? To me, that's a really interesting story. And there's a lot of issues like controversy around health issues, the whole aspect of getting a license and where do you park and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to know about operations. that make really good stories. And also recent trends. So there's now a new trend where food trucks are becoming caterers at events like weddings or office receptions and things like that, because that way they don't have to rely on foot traffic and fighting for a spot. They can pre-book events where they'll actually have some steadier income. So that was a really good trend story. So I hope you're beginning to see that every company, organization, nonprofit, entrepreneur, anybody has a variety of different stories within them. Second thing is expertise on business operations. So think to yourself what you have learned about running a business that you could help others. Customer relations, finding a location, hiring, firing, anything you've learned about building a business. I throw in this cartoon about a masseuse because in actual fact, when I was putting together a small business section at Business Vancouver, I was looking for somebody who could talk about appointment management systems, of which there are like hundreds out there. And if you've ever tried to run a system, actually, I'm curious how many people have tried to put on their own appointment management system, who use an appointment management system and have learned how to deal with appointment management system, because I have to say I went through about a dozen myself and still I'm not happy. So yeah, if you can let me know what I'm going to type this in, used an appointment management system. Okay. So anyway, this woman, a massage therapist, I was talking to her at a networking event and we happened to talk about appointment management systems. And I said, could you write me a column, 500-600 words, tell me which ones you tried out and which one you liked. And she did. So even though we weren't talking about her massage expertise, this was just an opportunity for her to get a little of a branding push by being in the small business section. Her name, her photo is there, her name's at the bottom of the column, so she gets some publicity out of it. Here's another example. So in this case, this is a person who works at the Letter Shop, which does printing and well, pretty much printing, lots of kind of printing. So, you know, business cards and banners and things like that. And I didn't talk to him about his product. I talked to him about branding. So what this person and his company learned about branding. You can see they actually have a really lovely brand. It's nice, modern, square, and that goes back almost 3 or 4 years. So they were kind of at the forefront of getting into that square branding technique. Online schedule that links my calendar, saves me a lot of time. Amy, what is the online scheduler? I'm curious. VCITA. Okay, I don't know what that is. All right, let's continue. Okay, event announcement. So this is one of the most common ones that people have where they're like, hey, I've got an event and I want to announce it. So I'm back to the Roger Killen theme. Here we are, TEDx event. TEDx started in 2 years ago, and Roger came to me and said, he's got this event he's got to promote. And of course, all people want to do is send out a press release that said, hey, this event, ABC event, is happening. And what they don't stop to think is, what are the stories deep inside the event that the editors are actually interested in? Especially if it's an event that happens year to year, we might look at it and say, oh yeah, TEDx is happening again. I'll give you 2 inches at the bottom of this column. It's nothing. It's like a little place for announcement. It might not give you much coverage. But if you can dig into the event and see if there's anything that connects to those 7 criteria, so apply those 7 criteria to the event itself. First of all, you have to know when you're seeking coverage. So is this something where you want coverage before the event, during the event, or after the event? That will actually help you determine the media strategy. Now let's take a look at who is involved. Are there stories behind the people behind the event? So the producer, Roger, has a story about how he got there. Each of the speakers has a story. The volunteers might be stories. Anybody involved in the event might have an interesting story. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, I'm there in that photo. That's why I chose that. So, if you don't know Roger, he is third from the right. Oh, and that's Iman on the right. I didn't know that. That's funny. So going back to what surprises people, or what are people talking about, what are people saying before or after the event? So if you had the event the year before, what were some of the after effects? What did they talk about? What was left as important recollection for them? What touched them? What moved them? What are people excited about? Are they speaking about things before the event? What are they most looking forward to? And of course, can you connect your product with Kim Kardashian? So this is where I come into the celebritainment. It's a little facetious, but honestly, let's say Kim Kardashian was spotted at a TEDx event. That becomes news. Oh, it's going to be the height of breakfast television. Did you know Kim Kardashian was seen as a TEDx event? Now, whoever has that on their newscast would be interested in connecting it with something locally, like a TEDx event locally. So maybe Roger Killen, who's the manager or organizer, if he hears about this, he then contacts a media outlet and says, hey, listen, I can tell you about TEDx and why Kim Kardashian would be interested. To be honest, she would probably go to TED, but anyway. So one of the ways I tell people to imagine what's the most important thing you want to talk about in your event is if you can imagine at the end of the day a great quote coming from somebody in the audience or somebody who is participating or somebody speaking, something that would really turn heads in a subject line. Imagine what that would be and ask yourself, who would say that? And then try to work that into the press release. And if it comes from one of your, like in this case, one of the speakers, that could be something that you lead with that you really catch attention. So I actually sat down with Roger and asked him everything I could about the event to start pulling out ideas of how we could promote it. And this was early in the game. It wasn't at a point where the speakers were finalized. It was about 4 or 5 months early. So we had to start looking. Some of the questions I would ask, are you reflecting certain trends or news items in the event? So in that particular year, they actually focused, there was one speaker who talked about distracted driving. So that could have been promoted in one email pitch. An event like this could pitch like dozens of different types of topics. So distracted driving was one of the speeches. That could be pitched as connected to a trend or news item because I don't know if you know, but apparently today, distracted driving passed drunk driving as a #1 road killer. Okay, what did you learn about business operations? So again, thinking about when you produce, create, run something, you're always learning. So in this case, there were aspects of HR, sponsorship, tech. He was using technology, brand new technology for his event. Maybe there's a story there. He knows about venue selection, might be a story there. So, and then finally, what are the emotional components? Positive, negative, neutral, how can you leverage them? In the end, we went for the HR story, and I helped Roger submit a pitch. We got 2 other people, and we went to Ask the Experts. So that's a column where 3 experts talk about a particular question. And in this case, because Roger was putting on this event with a lot of volunteers, the question was, how do I motivate a staff working for very little money? So we came up with the question. It reflected Roger's ability to inspire. It was kind of like a leadership play, but we really focused on how do you inspire people who are working for little money. #4 topic, what is new and changing? Now this in particular was the tea guy on television, and there were a lot of angles again. So if you think about something that's impacting your industry, it could be a trend or a legal item, whatever is going to make a difference. So in this particular interview, I was struck because it touched a lot of those 7 criteria. New and changing was kind of the top of the, I don't know, call it like the focus, because there were new items in the tea industry. There were new developments. You can see those, I don't even know I guess they're filters or whatever, tea steepers or something. I've never seen them before. So new techniques in brewing tea. but also in terms of health focused. People are drinking maybe more herbal tea. Sleep solution, a lot of people are trying to find those teas that'll help put them to sleep at night. And all of the developments are resulting in a more mature palate. So people are getting very picky about their teas, which is why some of us, like myself, I hate to say, has been sucked into like the $20 a pound tea over at David's Tea. But anyway, this is a huge growing industry. Anybody in this industry is going to be capitalizing or should be capitalizing on trends that are just coming out of the woodwork. And this is just going to continue to grow and be trendy, probably for several years to come. So the one before was about what's new and changing. This is about trends. So it's also a bit of what's new, but it could be repetition. It could be something that you kind of return to year after year. In this case, this woman was talking about kitchen design trends. And if you know anything about home reno, kitchens and bathrooms are like the top of discussions all the time. So if you're in the decor industry, I would suggest pitching kitchen and bath stories. So if you're knowledgeable about trends, what do you see that's going on in the news that you can connect your story to? What are people talking about? What's going on in pop culture that is connected? And once again, can you connect your product with Kim Kardashian? So ask yourself, what are the trends that impact or can be impacted by your business? The other thing that's I put in the trend category is whether something is seasonal. So the reason I call it a trend is because seasons come back every year. So there's kind of a trend to them. So there's a trend in the end of the year to look forward to the new year and talk about health stories. There's a trend in the spring to talk about cleaning stories. There's trends in the fall to talk about back to school stories and so on. So if there's any seasonal component to your product, this is another good way to get coverage. Now, I'm going to leave this up. I don't know if you can actually, you know what? I will. I don't know if I can. Whoops. Well, I'm going to leave that to you. You can just search Global News Open House with Lena Monroe. This page specifically has a whole bunch of clips from Global. Just one example, of course, all the TV stations are doing them, so you can use this system to look through any of the others. This shows a whole bunch of different clips where they have guest speakers on. So one thing to notice is, are they a regular commentator, a one-time guest, or repeating guest? You'll have to click through a bunch of them on a particular topic to see whether or not you have the same guest showing up. They usually do for things like health or financial services. Notice the time of day. Who are they talking with on the show? Who do you think their market is? Is this a time of day you want to be on? Is your market going to be watching? If not, maybe a different department, different kind of part of the show would be more relevant. Then we move on to the geographic or demographic. So as I mentioned earlier, when I was at the Jewish Independent, if you were Jewish and you had something that was relevant for my section, you could be in pretty much all the time. In this case, it's a geographic reference. So this guy I met at a networking event, his business was coffee. That was his product. He wanted to talk to me about getting his product into the newspaper. And I said, you know what? There are lots of coffee products. Let's figure out a good angle that maybe makes you stand out from the crowd. And so after I spoke to him for a while, it turned out that he actually did trade with Asia. He also had a sustainability component. But the fact that he had trade with Asia was a bit more rare. So finding people who are doing trade with Asia who could give lessons to other people doing trade with Asia was a good way to get this guy into the paper. And he gets that full-blown headshot. He gets a photograph of his coffee. And in the story, he can talk about how good his coffee is. Like he can say, I've decided to go to Thailand because it's the best coffee. So he gets to plug his actual product, even though the story is more about the trade issue. I'm going to take a breath here, and David's Tea, $58.80 for 500 grams. Thank you. Is it that much? Oh my God, I didn't realize it was that much. Okay. Hey, if you have a favorite David's tea, type it in the chat box. I don't remember mine. I'll go take a look. But I'm going to just stop here. I'm going to go silent for a moment, and I'd like you to tell me how the pace is. We have about 15 minutes, almost 15 minutes left, almost 20 minutes. Let me know how we're doing. Okay, I have one for speed it up. Good. Sorry I was late. Amy. Okay. All right. I am going to move up the pace just a little bit because I have so much to say. All right. This is another great geographic or demographic example, and it is going to be going on for years. This is the story about people who are over 50 or over 55 or over 60 or retired, whatever, fill in the blank, starting new businesses. I was actually given this story to write for a magazine called Retirement Ready, and it didn't matter what the product or service was. I just had to find people who started their business after the age of 50. That's it. That's how you get in. Of course, you have to know about it. You have to take my course to find out. All right, what is that? Type in the chat box. What is it? And why do I have it on screen? Grasshopper. Yes, it is a grasshopper. Anybody know why grasshoppers were in the news recently? It was a great story, and it's also going to be a trend. Okay, no time to waste. Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't. I thought it was a grasshopper. It's crickets. It doesn't matter. Crickets, grasshoppers. It's an insect. High protein. Food protein. Very good. So, why is this relevant? If you have any part of your business that is connected to this story, people in the media are looking to further the information. So they'll talk to the people who are producing this first, the people who are producing the protein bars. Coast Protein got tons of coverage. But what happens next week? What if they want an alternative comment? What if they want somebody to say that it's bad? What if you have an opinion about it that's a bit different? Anything that you can comment on and you've got some credibility behind you. So if you run a restaurant, if you're in the food industry, I don't know, anything that's going on that you have advice or you can actually comment on. You can even write a letter to the editor. Writing a letter to the editor is a really great way of getting your name known by the editor in a very quick, easy method. Telling the editor who you are, that you have knowledge about a certain subject, and giving the editor some background information about you so that the next time the editor might need somebody to talk to for that subject, even if they don't print your letter, at least they'll know who you are. I am going to skip this because I had a lot to talk about the Seroptimus, but I want to move on to editorial calendars because this is what's important today. So the editorial calendar is one of those little tips a lot of people don't know about, or they know about, but they haven't used. And I know this on firsthand authority because just a couple of weeks ago, I was telling somebody who's been in PR for like 5-6 years that they should be using this editorial calendar, and they weren't. So this is a calendar that presents the entire year's worth of special sections or special issues. On the left is a consumer magazine called Vita. On the right is Business of Vancouver. So what you see is essentially for Vita, they go month to month. Each of those tells you what they're producing in each month. Business of Vancouver has different sections week to week. I'll give you an example of that. Essentially, it says coming up in April of this year, they're going to have a section on human resources, construction in Vancouver, and BC election coverage. You know, if you know if anybody in the styling industry, a stylist, like clothing stylist, they could be a person to comment on the election, they could comment on people's clothing, how important it is when you're voting for somebody, or what the pundits are doing wrong, what the nominees are doing wrong. There's a lot of ways to access an election coverage story. And then the following week in May, the month in May, there is a small business section. So that's a good opportunity for anybody on this call to pitch a story. This is an example, again, going back to my client when we determined that he wanted to talk about customer resource management. I said, let's hone it towards small business, because you can use CRM for small, medium, or large. Let's direct the column for small business, pitch it to the small business section, which he did, and that's what he ended up in. Just as an example of some of the press releases that I've gotten in the past, I wanted to give you an example of how to do it properly, because besides pitching the story or your event in terms of getting all those 7 criteria right, you want to be able to structure it in a way that those criteria are going to be clear. So this is from a wellness show, which a lot of people have probably been to. You can see, again, big paragraphs. A lot of the information is hidden. In this case, you could see at the top the story angles I've pulled out. So these are the different criteria. So it looks at trends, it looks at news items. If there were specific trends or news items, you could mention it here. And everything else is done in point form. I've left a lot of blank space to make it very easy to read. I want to close on this section of the webinar with some of the things that the survey says. This is a survey done a couple of years ago of about 500 editors and journalists in the States. So 85% open their email based on the subject line. So that's why it's really key when you're pitching, if you're tying your story to some trend or news item, it's got to be clearly in the subject line. Or if you're pitching to a section, it's got to be in the subject line. In the subject line, only use about 45 to 65 characters. Only 10% cared if their name was in the subject line. Have a media page if you can with your bio, your writing topics, and previous coverage. Media hates clicking around websites to try and find different elements about you. If you can have it all collected on one page, that makes it so much easier for us to get the information that we need. Editors want now pitching for traditional and social media. So if you have an idea for a story, if you have elements that can be used on social media like video, they like that because then they can post online and they can use it in traditional media. And 88% want fewer than 200 words. That's not a lot of material. So I want to ask you something. If you think about what you're not doing in media, what are you missing out on? Because in my mind, there's a lot of opportunities that are out there that people really haven't been trained to take advantage of. When you miss out on the opportunities, how much money are you leaving on the table? I'm going to tell you how much using this example. This is the guy I just mentioned who pitched a small business. It took him maybe a couple of hours to write the actual column itself, and maybe even less time to write the email pitch. And that top half of a page, if he had bought an ad, would be worth $3,500. That didn't take him much time at all. So one of the things I brought up earlier has to do with taking the courses. And I really want people to think about this again in terms of what is it when you take courses that doesn't enable you to follow up? If you sit in this webinar and then you leave, is it because you don't have time? Is it because you're not accountable? Maybe for some of you, you might not be ready to do this, or you're still not sure this is the direction you want to go. But for a lot of people, when they see somebody's picture in a magazine coverage that does what they do, and they know that they can do it, they know they can be there, they know they can be the person interviewed on television, they know that they have the content, they have the skill, whatever they need, it's just nothing more than a frustration not being able to follow up. So that's why I created the Media Mastery Solution. This takes people from the beginning of understanding how media is actually structured, like editor, associate editor, editor-in-chief, managing editor, who do you pitch? So, and then it takes you through the different courses so that you become familiar and comfortable with the different pitch styles. What I am aiming for in this course, which is my beta version, is 5 steps that's going to get you publicity for your brand or service or product. And we're going to aim at television, radio, magazines, newspapers, and podcasts. We may not cover all of them for you, but every participant is going to be able to choose 1 or 2 of those to focus on. And by the end of the course, you'll actually have written your press release and reached out to media. One component, the 6-week program that enables you to complete the media-ready story pitch. The second component is going to be the live training. So we're going to have weekly classes which will enable Q&A. And every week I'm going to pick somebody's written material to use as an example and to edit with everybody else. So everybody's going to learn from it, but one person will get a one-on-one attention. And everybody was going to get homework that's going to have to be completed by the next class. And it's going to be something that's going to move them along in the plan. You're also going to get lifetime access to a support group that we're going to set up in Facebook. And that's going to be for people in the class, as well as editors, my previous clients, people who've had success in media. You're going to be able to post questions. You're going to be able to upload homework. I'm going to go in there and make comments on the homework. It's a great way to keep you on track with the course. And it's going to be a great way to have that accountability week to week, because people will know what everybody else is supposed to be doing. Now, for the first bonus, I'm going to throw in the new story pitches and book pitches. So every year I update, I have some on my website, but I update them to demonstrate templates, easy to use designs, ways that you can just take a template and fill it in. And there's always new and different ways of doing things. So right now I have about 10, and I'm going to be furthering that to have 15, 20, 30 different styles. So you can go in and just pick the one that's right for you. So anybody attending the course will have access to that. And editorial calendars. So I am constantly perusing the entire internet to get editorial calendars for you. On your behalf, you don't have to do the looking. I'm just going to download them and give them to you. So the first 6-week program is actually a $1,997 value. This is based on the material that I've created and the time that I'm putting into it. Then the actual training week to week, which is including the feedback, again, based on my hours, a $3,197 value. The lifetime access to the media support is another $2,000 value. The bonus that you're going to get for the templates is $1,000. And access to all the new material is $500. However, just to get this a little bit more exciting, for the next 3 days until the end of the bonus period, the first 10 people who are going to sign up are going to get a 1-hour media strategy session with me, valued at $1,000, in which I'm going to interview you exactly regarding all those 7 criteria to find out which ones you can use that are going to really hit the nail on the head when it comes to accessing media. We're going to get very clear on how you should be communicating that message. We're going to find the media outlets that you're going to want to get into and how to contact them. And we'll work on the exercises on how to follow up. And I'll be doing professional editing on your material. So this is a value of $9,000. Because it's a beta test for the first course, I'm giving it as a regular fee for $2,000. However, since it is the first time I'm launching, I've decided that anybody who signs up within a week of this webinar today can have the course for $1,000. I'm expecting people at the reduced rate to give me feedback, to participate the whole time, and to be able to bear with any of the technical issues, because that seems to be plaguing me over the last few days. Now, to make this even more attractive, because I am really eager to get a lot of people to give me the feedback and to be able to start training people in their media outreach, and so that they don't lose opportunities, I have a 72-hour exclusive offer for $600, which is, I don't know, pretty sure that's pretty amazing. I just want to get people into the class. I want to start working with people online, which I haven't done before. I do it sometimes at Small Business BC, but there's not the same interaction. So this is going to be something that's going to be unique to me and to all the people who start. So a value of $9,000, to be clear, for the next 72 hours, the investment is $600, a one-time fee, or you can break it down to 4 monthly payments of $177. And I am giving you a money-back guarantee. So if you're interested, you can access that special by going to MediaMastery.ca. That's all you have to punch in, MediaMastery.ca, and that'll take you to the special. Now, just to keep you interested and have you thinking a little bit more about what you need in your own media outreach, I want you to consider emailing me answers to these 2 questions. And whoever emails me the answers will actually get a selection of my 10 best email templates and the samples. So this is kind of a starter kit to understand how to fill out the different templates for emails when you're doing story pitches or event pitches. So the questions are, what is the most important message you took away from the training today? And what's missing for you that you feel should have been included or you needed included? So email those 2 to webinar@phase2coaching.com. And I will send you, just doesn't matter what your responses are, I'll send you this package of the templates and the samples. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I am going to open up the floor to questions, if I can figure out how to do this. Unmute. No, I'm going to mute all, but you can unmute yourself. Okay, so if anybody wants to throw a question in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and say, hey, it's Barry, hey, it's Pete, ask me whatever you need to know. I'm going to throw it open. And I'd like you to consider, actually, I'll throw a question out to you, and that is, what is it that really keeps you from following up after a webinar? Is it mostly time these days? Is it that you don't find it a priority? What keeps you from following up on any kind of exercises or ideas that you have from a webinar?
Hi, it's Pete.
Hey, Pete.
Hi.
Pete Quilly.
Yeah. I got a 1 o'clock. Got a lot of coverage for others.
I'm sorry, Pete. You are breaking up terribly. I can only hear 2 or 3 words of you.
Okay. Now?
Nope, there's still some problem. It's almost like you have a loose mic connection. When I hear you, it's clear, but then it just disappears completely.
Still?
If you're plugged in with a headset, maybe unplug and just talk into your computer mic.
No. I'll let somebody else go.
Oh, you seem good now.
Oh. I've the stigma diagnosed.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to ask you to Pete, write your question into the chat box. Yeah, you go for a few words and then it disappears.
Sorry.
If you could. Anybody else have a question? Or want to answer the question of what prevents you from following up? Or if you have a question or a challenge right now in media that is on the horizon, like something that's coming up right away that you'd like some, a perspective on. Okay, so from Pete, how do I get my ADHD coaching covered as a specific media story, not ADHD in general? What I actually do versus undiagnosed, undertreated, stigma. Okay, so first off, my question would be, is there something in your coaching that is unique or different from other people's coaching? So few ADHD coaches. Most are generic life and business coaches. Okay. If anybody else wants to jump in and start writing a question, I'm in the chat box now. Longer than anyone else in BC. So, okay, the fact that you've been doing it longer than anybody else does give you more credibility. It's not a high, in my opinion, it wouldn't be a high reason to put you into a story or to cover what you're doing. I would still need something that is a little unique, or something that can give me perspective about you personally. So there might be an interesting story you have with your own experience with ADHD that you could bring to the table. And I'm just curious, so most of the time, are you interviewed about something that's in the news? So for example, if there's a news story about higher rates of depression, for example, do you get a call and somebody says, please, come in as an expert to talk to us about higher rates of depression? Is that usually what happens? They find me on the website, find me on social media because you have a more feature story versus news. Okay. So in most cases, you're actually being interviewed about a topic and not necessarily about your own coaching style. Yeah. So in order to move, and that is generally the procedure for two reasons. One, the focus is on the topic that's in the news of the day. So if people are talking at the water cooler about something that just happened or an ongoing trend with ADHD, then they're going to listen or turn up the dial when they hear somebody talking about that topic. Okay, so there's somebody banging things in the background. Just make sure you're muted. So the way it goes, we usually talk about a topic. We don't necessarily talk about a person themselves. Sometimes it's seen as giving that person free publicity like an advertisement, as opposed to talking about them because they have an interesting story or a unique message to give. So what I would do is identify for yourself, what are the ways that you maybe stray from the general community? What are the places where you might have a different angle on something that you think is really relevant? And play up that different angle when you pitch to media. As I mentioned earlier, I think in your environment, a letter to the editor is really appropriate because stories are in the news a lot. You can, if you see something going on where you might have a different approach to coaching that individual, you write a letter to the editor, and this could be anywhere in a consumer magazine, or it could be in a newspaper. It doesn't really matter if you're responding to something in the news. And by the way, if you write a letter to the editor, it's a myth that you have to be responding to something in that magazine or newspaper. That's a myth. You can respond to something that you heard in general, as long as it falls within some of the coverage topics of that magazine or newspaper. So where was I? Right. So you're going to think of writing a letter to the editor where you can actually talk about the way you coach and address something that you saw in the news, and write the letter by saying, in my, I think you said 13 years of working in this industry, I've developed a coaching style that could have dealt with this issue in a different way. What I think is wrong right now, or what I think needs to be improved right now in the ADHD community is, and this is what I cover. So you are promoting the way you coach, you're connecting it to a trend or a topic. And as I said earlier, whether they choose to put your name in or not, if like put the letter in or not, if that editor now sees that this is an angle that you can speak about and you have a certain coaching style, they may return to you to talk specifically about your coaching style. So that's kind of how you can get in there. So I hope that answers your question. I want to allow other people to get in there. So if you have anything else, if you want to follow from that, just send me an email and maybe we can flesh that out a bit more. In this case, I would have to know more about what you've been doing in the past that you don't want to repeat in order to see like where you want to go in the future. So I hope that gave you some ideas. Is there anybody else who wants to jump in? And I hear somebody
Hey,
saying hello.
My apologies. Just finishing up on the call.
Okay.
So, are you in a? Yeah, it's a lot of noise. Is there a quieter place you could
Okay, whoever's talking, can you mute
focus
yourself?
more energy on what you say versus trying to?
Oh, is it?
Sorry, did somebody start talking?
Finite bandwidth to focus it on you.
Okay, Pete. I hope you got some value from there. Okay, well, if there's nobody else who wants to jump in and receive one-on-one exclusive training, I'm just going to thank you all for being on the call. And please do follow up if you want any more information. I do have a course that starts next Thursday and another one that starts in April 18th. And by the way, if you are considering applying to the BC Jobs Grant, the April 18th one would be a great one to include. There's enough time to apply, and they are taking applications for courses after April 1st. So it could make it very easy for you. And if you don't know about the BC Jobs Grant, if you're in BC and you apply for certain types of training, even as a solopreneur, you are eligible for 66% reduction. The 66% would be paid for by the province. So you would essentially pay $177 and they would pay $354 or whatever. But anyway, just to let you know, there are two courses that are I'm holding March and April, and the price will go up because as I get better at this, I'm going to just be providing so much value in these courses that I'm going to be starting at $900 and going to $2,000, and pretty soon you won't be able to get this kind of price. Anyway, hope that everything goes well with whatever you decide to do in your media coverage. Drop me a line if you have any follow-up questions, and I will get the information to you, the recording and those press releases within 24 hours. Have a great rest of the day, and thank you so much for joining me on the call today.